Hi, it's Pavel with C Sharp Homework, and we will be modifying an exercise we did, exercise 615. So if you didn't watch that video, please do so because this one will be a modification of that. What we did in that exercise is we created a pattern of stars, four of them. See, one, two, three, and four. That kind of a triangle shape, right? And in this exercise, we are supposed to modify that so all of them are next to each other. Oh, we had them under each other. Now they will be next to each other. All right. So, and in this format, so basically, oh, this number of spaces, it doesn't have to be this many. They don't really say how many. I just, this is just for you to see what the output is supposed to be. What it's going to look like. So if you look at it from perspective of lines and columns, then we'll see that we get 10 lines, but we get 40 columns. We get a rectangle. We got 10 lines, 10 stars here, plus 10 stars, plus 10 stars, plus 10 stars, plus some spaces. Arbitrary number. We will play with the spaces. How many? We will decide. But in other words, we are creating a pattern of star space, 10 stars space, 10 stars space, 1 star, and then 2 stars space, 9 9 2, 3 8 8 3, 4 7 7 4. I hope you see the pattern there. And between each, after each star, there will be after each uh, row of stars, obviously you move to the next line. But after each uh, sequential stars, there will be a space. In other words, 4 stars, space. This is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 stars, space. 7 stars, space. 4 stars, new line. 5, space. 6, space. 6, space. 5, and so forth. In other words, I'll be treating it as rows and columns, not as 4 separate uh, shapes or patterns, but only as one rectangle image. That's my approach to this problem. So this is our previous solution. Like I said, have a look at it. We are creating these, but in different order. We will start. We're supposed to start with this one, which is our first one, but then we will do our, actually they are in the same order, never mind. So A, B, C, and D. Okay, so I'm going to delete most of this stuff because like I said, before we had them as 40 different shapes. Now it's going to be just one shape. So I will delete everything from those functions. And I'm going to keep these because I still will need stars. I still will need space, and I counter equals 10 because that's the number of stars in a row, the maximum number of stars in a row. It still is, in a way, 4 separate shapes with a maximum of 10 stars. But like I said, I will count them as one big rectangle with spaces in between. All right, so I have the functions ready. I have the variables ready. And I'm going to call my function A. Now, this function uh, is like you have to realize again. I cannot stress it enough. This is one image to us now. So our function A, which is on the bottom actually, I'll move it to the top just so I don't have to scroll so far. So a, I need some variables. I'll need the index for the loop, and I'm going to declare it now because I will have to reuse it within all the other functions as well. So I have the index, and now I'm going to loop to do those stars, the initial stars. So for index equals 0, and index is less than the counter, and of course index plus plus. So we have the outer loop. Now we need the inner loop. This is the raw. And remember, this one outer loop. This is whole raw. This is another raw. In other words, we will loop through this raw, then this raw, not through 1 star, 2 stars, 3 stars, but instead 1 raw, 2 raw, 3 rows. In other words, 10 of them together. Counter equals 10. So our inner loop, well, if you look at it, we always start with stars. The first column, this is, if you see, starts with star. So we can console dot write, not write line, but write star. And, how many stars it's gonna write depends on the index. But of course, I forgot the actual inner loop. That this is the outer loop that controls the rows. This is the inner loop that controls the column. So C equals 0, and C is less or equal to our index. That depends. Like I said, how many stars will display depends on index, which will be passed to our variable C and our C++. All right, so we have our for loop here. I'll separate it with the brackets just so it's clear where one loop starts and the other ends. So we have the rows and we have the columns. And again, the columns, it's not just like for this one pattern. The columns are all the way here. So it's gonna be like 40 of them plus with spaces in between. So it's going to be minimum of 40 plus 1 space, 2 spaces, 3 spaces. So 43 columns minimum. We can play with the number of spaces between each pattern. All right, so we have that. So we now after the star, after we display the stars, we need to display the spaces. How many? Again, it will vary from row to row. Actually, it will be the same. I'm sorry, it will be the same because we are talking about the patterns, the spaces between the patterns. So I will actually make another function that will be the whole purpose of this function is going to be to display the rows. I mean the spaces. I'm sorry. So it's going to be a static public void, and I'll call this display spaces, and it will display spaces. So it will be for integer I equals 0, I. How many spaces we display is really up to us. I'll do 10 spaces between each pattern to begin with, and then we can do less or more. And I++. And all we do is console.write, and we are displaying the space. All right. So we display the star. Now we will display, or we will call the function display spaces, which will display spaces. Now, how many spaces? Well, like I said, we'll simply start with 10, and then we'll see. Let's see what we get right now. Okay, we get 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so we get the 10 spaces. You star 10 spaces, star 10 spaces. Okay, so this is this. If you look at the pattern, we start with the star, which is here, and display 10 spaces. Then we start with a star, but obviously now we need to do 10 stars, and then 10 spaces. Imagine that there's 10 spaces in here. And then we need another 10 stars, 10 spaces, and 1 star. Right now we have 1 star, 10 spaces, 1 star, 10 spaces all over. So now we need to actually call the other patterns. After we display the spaces, we go to display, display our pattern B. All right, and what do we do with the B? We're going to display only stars. Again, we have a separate function for these spaces. So all we are going to be displaying stars. How many stars? Well, how about as many as the number of index? So, and I'll show you why. Here's our B function. I'm going to copy and paste it over here because that's what we're working now, so we can see it better. And it will take an integer index. The reason it takes an integer of index because the number of stars fluctuate from row to row. It will change, and it will change based on the index value, which is the outer loop. Remember, that's the outer loop. Our index at the beginning is 0, then 1, then 2, and then 10. So our B pattern, considering that we pass in the index, we go to a loop for, let's say, integer. I'll call it, well, let's call it C because we're doing columns. C is less than the counter, which is 10. It's always 10. That's the maximum number of stars. But minus the index that we are passing, all right? In other words, the first index we pass is 0, right? So we will write 10 stars. The next index is 1. So 10 minus 1, we will write 9 stars. Then 8 stars, 7 stars, and so forth. If you remember, we start 10 stars, 8 stars, 7 stars, and so forth. So our C++, and we are doing the console dot write, and we will display the star. Let's see what we get. Let's build errors. No overload for method display B takes 0 arguments. I have it to take index. Display B takes index. Oh, this is my main method. That's wrong now. All I'm doing, remember, I'm calling these patterns line by line from my display A. All right. This is our basically our main method only now calls the A, and our display A will take care of the whole pattern. So let's try now. And you get 1 star, 10 stars. I mean, 1 star, 10 spaces, 10 stars, 10 spaces, 10 stars, and so forth. And then you get another 1 star. All right, so that would this is our second pattern. Now let's do the third pattern, which is 10 as well, but it's we start with 10 and go 9, but over here we start with spaces as well. So our pattern C will be called after we include our display spaces again. All right, and remember, this is the number of spaces between each of those patterns. Okay, so our C, I'll copy that on the top so you can see it. Our display C, again, I'm sorry, I'll call it from right after I call the B, I'll call the C, and I will pass the index again, because again, we are only printing stars that fluctuate, the value changes with each row. So we will accept an argument in this function, and we'll go for loop again, of course. Integer C equals 0, C is less than counter. Again, counter minus index. Remember, we are changing the number of stars in index like that. And C++. So it's actually the same same as B. I think let me do that. Console dot write. We'll write a star only. And if I run it, yeah, nothing changes. It's a star 10 10. Okay, so if you look at C and B, they're exactly the same. So we really just need one. So I'll just go B again over here after B space B, and I'll delete the C. That's my bad. I mean, if I, yeah, nothing changes. It's still 10 stars. Okay, so now the last pattern, D, again, has to be separated with spaces from the previous pattern. So display spaces. And our D, D, okay, so let's do our D. We'll start with the for loop, of course, for integer C equals 0. C is less than what? Now we start with 1 again, not 10. So it's not the counter. Counter is 10. That will start with 10. We start from the index, which starts from the 0. So over here it's actually index. So C is less than index in C++. And we'll do the console dot write star. Oh, I need to first call it display D, and I'll pass the index. So over here, I will accept the index, integer index, and now I can use that in the function. All right, so I have that. So I have this takes care of the A pattern space, B pattern space. This is actually C pattern, but it's the same like B space, and then D pattern. And at the end of D, we go to a new line. So console dot write line. All right, well, let's see what we get. Ooh, something. Well, it's fluctuating, but not exactly. All right, let's do a little debug. But before, let me just look at it quickly. All right, so I call a pattern B, which is my B over here. It takes the index. That's C0. Should be counter minus index. That's correct. I'm pretty sure because this one worked. So that was our B, and our C was supposed to be the same. So yeah, there was nothing we needed to change. And our D, okay, it takes index. That should be okay. And C, we got the index plus plus. You know what? I think let me try with equal. Uh, well, didn't really do anything. All right, let me have a closer look at it. I'm thinking, all right, you go to the for loop, go to the first pattern, and the spaces, second pattern. You know what? Let me do a quick debug over here, just to see what it is that it's doing. Okay, it goes to star. It writes a star. We got a star. We got a star here. Okay, so it goes and writes spaces. Okay, it writes 10 spaces. Goes to a next one. Well, you can see the cursor. It's 10 spaces after the star, so that worked. Then it goes to B, and it loops through all that. I'll move out of it. What does it display? Displays 10 stars. Then again to spaces. And at the first iteration we have star, 10 spaces. So this would be correct with the first iteration. Now it goes to the second. Oh wait, it doesn't go to the second. It goes to the second over here. It's supposed to go to second over here. This is our outer loop. Okay, so our inner loop, it writes the star. That's the first pattern. This is the line for the first pattern to write the stars. But these are looping within their own functions. In other words, we have a loop within a loop. I mean, we had a loop, then a loop within that, and when we call the functions, we had another loop within that. It's supposed to be outside the loop. All right, let me run it again. And what do you know? Here it is. And this is the 10 spaces between each pattern. Now, I can change that. Let's say I change it to only one space after each pattern. And then we have something like this. Or, let's say, I don't know, 4 spaces. It doesn't matter. It's just a space between each of those patterns. And each of those patterns is ran within their own for loop. It only takes care of the stars. The spaces have their own separate functions. And the number of spaces, basically, like I said before, this is one pattern. And there's a star space, star space, star space. So when we run these line by line, the pattern isn't one pattern, then second pattern, third and fourth, but one line, two lines, third line, and so forth. The number of spaces here could be, if I made it 0, it would be one big rectangle, for example. Before, we need to account for each space here and here, for each pattern separately. Now this is one pattern of spaces between each pattern of stars. Okay, so I hope you kind of get what's happening here. In our main, I'm simply calling the display A, which calls all the other methods. In display A, function, I start the outer loop, which takes care of 10 lines. I'll display the the stars for the first pattern, which would be 1, 2 stars, 3 stars, and so forth. After that, I display spaces, which is another loop, and displays a certain number of spaces. Then I'll call B function, which simply displays stars after the spaces. Then I call another spaces after, and then B again, because again B and C is the same, spaces, and then D. So if you having a hard time to see what's happening there, just try to run the code in a debug mode, line by line, see how the values change, how the display changes, and at the end you should get this or something like that, depending on how many spaces you want in between each pattern. All right, I hope it helped you, and I'll see you next time. Take care.